Welcome to Attleboro Update. A local elected official recently toured a nation that few Americans have stepped foot in. State Representative Paul Heroux recently traveled with the tour group to the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, which is more commonly known as North Korea. James Friedman of AACS sat down with Representative Heroux in order to get some insight on what North Korea is really like.
My name is Paul Heroux, and I'm a state representative from Attleboro, but I went to North Korea between August 13th and August 20th as a private citizen, just as part of a tour sponsored through a Chinese tour company that was, contacted through my Harvard Graduate School of Government. Why North Korea? Why not North Korea? It's a place that only about 2,000 Americans get to travel to per year. They have about 60,000 tourists total go to that country. So they have a very small tourism industry. This is an extremely important country in that area of the world. And so just to have a better sense of what it's like on the inside of the country is, kind of invaluable to any person who is paying attention to world events. The thing with this tour was that the tour company KITC, Korea International Tour Company, it's a arm of the government, and we saw on this tour what the government is proud to show us. And that's what I can boil it down to. I saw what the government is proud to show us. At first I was saying we were seeing what they're proud to show us, but then I realized there's a difference between what the people and the government, and so that's what it was. We were shown what they are proud to see. The Korean War, 1950 to 1953, that war is basically their reason d'etat. Everything boils down to what they call a victory over the Americans in that war. And there are monuments everywhere celebrating that. It's just, their educational curriculum is on math, science, and the revolution, winning the war, and Kim Il-sung coming to power. And that's the second half of it, is that when I was living in Saudi Arabia 10 years ago, everything boiled down to Islam. And if you're living in the Vatican, everything will boil down to Catholicism. But in North Korea, everything boils down to the Kim family and their leadership. And so at one point I was talking to the North Korean tour guide, and I said, it's sort of, the Kims are sort of godlike. And she said, no, not God. Just a chairman, just a person, but we hold them in the highest of high respect. When I visited the birthplace of Kim Il-sung, the first of the Kims, the first of the three, it was like visiting Bethlehem. It was just quiet, it was serene, they had music playing in the background, like hidden speakers in bushes, and the little thatched, with thatched roofs, like with hay, and it was just really, I was like, wow, this is really interesting. So everything comes down to those two elements: the victory, what they call the victory over the Americans, over the United States in 1953, and then the Kim family, and their Kim Jong-il and Kim Il-sung, the father and the grandfather of the current Kim Jong-un. Their two portraits were everywhere, just absolutely everywhere. We drove all over that country, went to a lot of different cities, a lot of different places. There was no obesity, and that could be cultural, or it could be the lack of food. I'm not sure, but that's just what I observed. The people that I did meet, people I did talk to, very nice. As we're driving through on our bus, driving through different areas, going from one area to another area, we would often wave at the people, group of kids or just people on the side, and they just wave right back. And so it was, quite pleasant to see that. But did we actually get to sit down and talk politics and talk, do you respect or do you fear the Kims and the regime? I can't comment on that because it wasn't part of the tour, and there's probably people who would argue both sides. The one time that we got to mingle with locals, we went to a kind of like a central park, if you will. It was their idea of a park, like a central park, and there was traditional Korean dancing going on. And one of the members of the tour, he was a Mormon from Utah, and so when he did his mission, he spent 2 years in South Korea learning Korean, the culture, and the language. And so he asked, can I go dance with them? And so the tour was sure. So all of a sudden, about half of our group, there's 24 of us, about half the group went down and started dancing with the traditional Korean dance, just with the locals. Although we did also go on the subway system, but there was no interaction. It was just side by side. But in this one, we're actually dancing together. Another thing is when I visited the DMZ, the demilitarized zone, that was really tense. They told us this: don't blink the wrong way. It's a really tense area. You've got North Korea and South Korea standing off, staring at each other. And you've got minefields everywhere that have just completely blocked off in some parts of the DMZ. Other parts of the DMZ are just like farm area. And when we did go to the 38th parallel, we had the North Korean base looking directly across from the South Korean base. Interestingly, there was no fence. No fence at all, but there were a handful of people standing there with guns on both sides, and you knew that if you wanted to take a run for it, you'd be shot running across. You could just tell. Cameras everywhere, but it was very, very tense. The landscape is beautiful. We drove probably, my guesstimate is around 1,200 miles, going from Pyongyang to Hamhung to a farm area to agricultural university. We drove all over the place, over the course of the 7.5, 8 days that we were there. And when you get outside Pyongyang, the capital, it's just absolutely beautiful, except for the roads. The roads are a disaster. I mean, they were just completely the worst conditioned roads. I mean, the worst I've ever seen in the United States was down in New Orleans. This was worse than that. And so the bus ride just had it was a really, really bumpy bus ride. But within the urban cities, the buildings were very run down, very poor looking. There was no air conditioning in any of them. One of the things that happens as a consequence of that is that the people don't spend much time inside the buildings. They're hot and humid. They only go there pretty much to sleep at night. People are always outside. They're just very, very communal, and everybody is virtually the same. People dress the same. They're all very nice. But it's very, very impersonal. And that kind of fits in with the whole socialist communist ideal, which is you are just one pixel in a picture, which is very different than the individualistic society that we have here, which I much prefer. And it's just a really good learning opportunity. And I would encourage anybody to go to any country that is in the news frequently. Just have a sense of adventure, keep an open mind.